Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday. It is 4 p.m. ET, and we are so thrilled that you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 15, going on 16 novels of suspense. My current book is on the door behind me because that's what you do. You put your book on the door. One Wrong Word, and my brand new book coming out in September is called All This Could Be Yours. Do I have that right here? No, I don't. Yes, I do. No, I don't. Yes, I do. Look at this. This is the advance bound manuscript of All This Could Be Yours. There are like 3 of these in the world, but this proves this is going to be a real book. So we'll talk about that when the time comes. But today I have the just absolute joy and delight of introducing you to Bonnie Kistler, whose new book, Shell Games, has just come out in November. You all, it is fantastic. It is unputdownable. It's really, really twisty and really, really smart. Look how battered my copy is from how I was just reading it on the treadmill and reading it everywhere because I was carrying it around with me. It's so good. And the title, let me show you this, Shell Games, is such a perfect title. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the interview. I'm going to read you something very, very quickly. Bonnie is sitting right here waiting to talk, but I'm going to keep talking for one more second because I want to read you part of the Publishers Weekly starred review, which is amazing. It says in part, unputdownable. I mean, when was the last time Publishers Weekly called something unputdownable? Kistler masterfully keeps the action thrumming and double crossings stack up, resulting in the rare page turner that doesn't deflate in the final act. This will keep readers up all night. And I'm telling you, it did. I was staying up way too late to read this, but I really couldn't put it down. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Shannon Hansen is here, and Emily is here, Deborah Press, and Sherry Steuben, Kathy Lang, and Robin Stull. This is so great. Sherry says, I have this book, and I'm excited about the interview. So are we. Welcome, Bonnie. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Hank. It's a pleasure to finally meet you.
You too. Thank you. What do when you get a good review like that, when you get a supremely fabulous review like that, a star from Publishers Weekly, how did you see that for the first time? And did you get it, or did somebody tell you and your publisher? And what did you think when you saw it?
My publisher sent it to me, and it was during the Summer Olympics in Paris were going on at the time. And when I read it, I thought I was standing up there with the gold medal. I'll tell you, that's exactly what it felt like. It's such a distinguished publication, and stars given out fairly rarely, and so I was just delighted. And then the text, words like masterful. I was like, me, moi.
Well, it's interesting because you can't really go wrong with masterful. And but you worked on this book so hard. It's so careful and such a good puzzle and completely fair in every way. And, did you have days when you thought, I don't know if this is going to work? I mean, or did you?
For sure. There was one twist that really did not come together until I was pretty far along in the process. And I'm still thinking, what exactly am I doing with this character? I know he/she, I don't want to give anything away, is there for some nefarious purpose, but what exactly is that? And it just kind of clicked at the end. I was like, well, that makes perfect sense. And, but it was almost scarily late in the process.
Yes. And I think that's interesting. I want to talk after the show is over. I'll ask you what that was, because I wonder if I know, because there's so many possibilities, male and female, of who you might be talking about, all of which I thought were possibilities as I was reading this book, because, of course, I was trying to guess. But I wonder about that when you think you're writing this book and you have a character that you don't know what their role in the puzzle is. And when you somehow figure it out, what do you think about that moment as a writer? Where does that magic come from?
It actually made me wonder if somehow in the recesses of my mind, I'd always known, because it just fits so perfectly. And I thought, well, of course, why didn't I just have it at the front of my brain instead of the back of my brain?
Yeah, I guess the muse works in mysterious ways, huh?
Yes.
Well, I can't wait for all of you. Look, so many more people are joining, and you can't go wrong with Masterful, says Mighty Blaze. Kim Rutter says, hello, book friends. Shannon Hansen. Hi, Shanson says, love the cover. I do too. And we will hear more. give you the cover. Yeah, you hold it close and see that gorgeous house, which is so much pivotal in the book. Let me quickly say, if you are new to A Mighty Blaze, you have picked the perfect day to join us to hear about Bonnie Kistler's brand new Shell Games, and you will love this book. If you are a veteran of Crime Time, that is so fantastic, and we are so happy to see you here today. A Mighty Blaze was started at the beginning of the pandemic 5 years ago. And I have to tell you, 250 crime times ago, which is amazing, by the wonderful powerhouse duo of Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt, to keep us all learning about new books and meeting new authors and reading new books and reading new authors, and also kind of talking to each other. You know, the names that I just read, so many of you are here so often: Kim and Shanson and Kathy and Sharon, and you all know each other as well as in a community of people, and that is absolutely great. So we are still going strong. And one more thing, and then I'll let Bonnie talk, is that, no, I'm going to give you her bio too, is that Bonnie is giving away a copy of this book. Not this one, because yes, just like that, a brand new, your book, this one is my book, to one lucky commenter. So leave a question or a comment or just general applause and adulation for Bonnie in the comments, and we will spin the wheel of fun at the end of the show, and some lucky winner will win. And the rest of you, you know what to do. You're going to run, click, click. Hey, Sue Street, good afternoon. Run, click, click, and get your own copy of Shell Games, but not right now. Not right now. Thank you, Shannon Hansen. Love Crime Time, she says. Bonnie Kistler, let me tell you, is the author of The Cage and Her Too, a former Philadelphia trial lawyer. She was born in Pennsylvania and educated at Bryn Mawr College and the University of Pennsylvania Law School. She and her husband now live in Southwest Florida and in the mountains of Western North Carolina. And she was on Jeopardy.
Yes.
You have to tell us. Hey, Donna Ruther, you have to tell us about Jeopardy.
Well, I should begin by saying I lost. I was up against a 6-time champion at that point. He was one of the super champs of that season, a wonderful young man. And the other contestant was also a young man. And they played video games all the time. They're so good on the buzzer, very good on the buzzer. And I think I lagged a little bit behind, but my goal when I went on was not to embarrass my family, and I think I succeeded at that.
Well,
I was able to hold my own fairly well.
So many. I mean, I love Jeopardy, and I bet so many of the people who are watching Crime Time love Jeopardy too. What is it? Have you always loved it, and what is it about it?
Oh, yes. Yeah, no, I've always been a fan. We tune in every night and play along, and just always thought, I might be good at this. I might be good at this. And then did the online test. This was during the pandemic. So instead of doing the in-person interviews that they had previously always done, they did it via Zoom. So I had my Zoom, and we played a little practice game, and they said, hold up a pen and click it and pretend that's your buzzer to ring in, so you get practice doing it. And obviously, past that. But because it was the pandemic, I got the call to come, and I said, I'm not getting on a plane, at this point. So I turned them down, and I thought that I'd blown my chance. They called a second time. Again, I said, I'm so sorry, just not while this is. And by the time the third call came, I had just finished the book tour for The Cage. I'd been on a plane and was happy and comfortable. I said, yes, thank you for calling back. I'm coming.
That's fantastic. Emily is asking, would you participate in the game again? Would you do it again?
I would. I think I'd try to learn more geography.
There's your motto, right? I think I'd try to
learn geography.
I've been a television reporter for a long time. And back in the days that I did feature reporting, not investigative reporting, but feature reporting, I did a big series on how to get on a game show. And we went out to California, and I talked to Alex, and Alex Trebek went back when he was the host. And I took the test, and he said, well, you could have gotten on Jeopardy if you weren't already on television. Yeah. And I was very happy not to have put myself out like you did for potential humiliation forever. But
it was potentially, yeah.
But I asked him, apropos of what you're saying, I asked him, what is the key to winning on Jeopardy? And he said, buzzer skills.
Yes.
So there you have it. So there you have it. So you all, so much for Jeopardy. Let's talk about fictional people in Jeopardy in shell games.
Yes.
Bonnie, can you just tell us a little bit about what the book is about?
It's about a woman who's a 70 years old, glamorous power broker in Florida, very wealthy real estate developer who has been suddenly reunited with her long lost high school sweetheart, marries him as the book begins, and on their wedding night calls the police in hysterics saying that her husband Charlie has just confessed that he was the killer in some notorious unsolved crimes from the 1980s. The Tylenol murders, for those people who remember the actual Tylenol murders back in 1982. And quickly, the police absolved Charlie. He's got a perfect alibi. And Charlie says he never confessed such a thing at all, that his bride is clearly just a little too tipsy on wedding champagne and that she imagined it. And meanwhile, she has an adult daughter who's married to a doctor, and her son-in-law insists that she has dementia. He's seen the signs coming. And the story really becomes the story of her daughter trying to decide, is her brilliant mother losing her mind? Or is her beloved new stepfather actually a con man trying to gaslight her mother into thinking she's insane or thinking that she's lost her mind in order to get control of her vast fortune?
There you have it, you all. Does that not sound like a fantastic book? And it really, really is. So let's take a little bit by bit. It is such an engaging and unique mother-daughter conflict, love, hate, admiration story. And it's unusual to see that, a 70-year-old flashy, glamorous mom and her daughter who's still trying to please her, even though her mother hates her husband. So talk a little bit about why that mother-daughter dynamic was so important for you in this story.
Yes, yeah. First, having a powerful woman of 70 is not something you see a lot. When you see wealthy women in fiction, they're usually heiresses or widows of powerful men. She did this all on her own. She is self-made. So she is a force of nature. She kind of, sucks up all the oxygen in the room. Julie, her daughter, has grown up under her shadow, and it's resulted in her being really uncertain of herself and kind of diffident and a little mousy in her demeanor and not at all the showboat that her mother is. And then Julie has kind of compounded that situation by marrying a very controlling man. Her husband is an orthopedic surgeon, and I have to tell you, in Florida, that's the equivalent of being a god. and he thinks he is one, and acts as if he is. So she has this mother who, and they do love each other, but there's this tension there where Julie has never quite grown up to meet the ideals that her mother would have wanted her to. And then she's got this, controlling husband that she's kind of in sexual thrall to. And between these two forces, she's kind of meek. And it takes the course of the novel for her to come into her own. And it takes the events that happen in the novel for her to really become a different person by the end of the book.
And it's so interesting how the dominoes fall. And we'll be really careful about spoilers on this. But on page 1, in walks Charlie, who knew the mother in real life, in high school, and now has come back, a long series of circumstances, and they're superly, madly in love. Talk a little bit about that situation, how each character, Julie and Kate, think about Charlie and their hopes and fears for him, and what you as an author thought about him.
Charlie is a salt of the earth guy. He is genial, affable. Everybody takes to him instantly. He's a man's man. He's an ex-Marine, but not the kind of, swaggering, bullying kind of model that we sometimes see in fiction. He's a genial guy who looks after other people, and everybody instantly warms to him. He is, as I said, he was Kate's love, the love of her life. She was the love of his life. They've been apart for 50 years, but instantly, reconnected. And part of what I enjoy doing here is that even though Kate is steely-minded, she's a real tough woman, when it comes to Charlie, she's completely soft and vulnerable and just adores him and just wants to be with him. And Julie has just taken to him. She lost her father when she was just a child, and he's the father that she is just longing to have. And that sets up the whole dilemma for Julie, because she doesn't want to lose Charlie, but she has to believe her mother, who's saying he's gaslighting me. He did confess, and he confessed to a crime he couldn't have committed for the sole purpose of making me look like I'm a crazy woman. And
it's interesting because
it's hard to believe that Charlie would do such a thing.
Yes, it's hard for her to believe that Charlie would do such a thing, and also that and I just thought about this, we as readers hear him say that to her. So she's not making up that he said that to her. And
well, we hear it through Kate's eyes, and she's intoxicated at the time, and the room is tilting when he says, Katie, darling, I have a confession to make. And so the question for the reader is, did he really say it, or did Kate imagine that he said it?
Yes, exactly. And I love how Julie's idea of who Charlie is begins to evolve. And you're really masterful, I'll use the word, use of the threat of gaslighting, which is, you talk about it, and then we'll talk about that a little bit more. Why did you decide to have that be an element?
Gaslighting, I think, is the ultimate con game. If the bad evildoer can manipulate the victim into not believing their own perception of reality, into thinking that, black is white because this person is telling them that it is, and not having that confidence in your own views of what is real and what is not. I think that's just an amazing trick if you can do it. And so I thought it would be fun to write a novel about gaslighting. And the question really becomes is exactly who is being gaslit. Kate, the mother, insists that she's not being gaslit. He certainly must know he could never manipulate me. It's you, darling daughter, that he's actually trying to gaslight, so that you will question whether I'm not of sound mind anymore. And then Julie's like, is he gaslighting me? And there's other layers of gaslighting in there as well.
Yes. And I think one of the things that's so powerful about that is that, this book is not, Laurie says, gaslighting what every woman is afraid of. Absolutely so. Because when a woman tends to be fearful and not confident in the first place, and someone starts telling them they're wrong, they've misperceived something, exactly. And then they're always wrong and they always do this, and then I'll take care of you. Mm-hmm. That is a real trap. And I do think that this book, and if you just joined us, hooray, we're talking about Shell Games by Bonnie Kistler, which is just out and fantastic. It may be that when you start losing confidence in yourself, the book is not violent, but it shows how violent emotional damage can be. The violence that people do emotionally to each other, how powerful that can be. Did that grow, that the realization of that grow as you were writing this book?
Yes. The impact of not knowing where the truth lies, doubting yourself at every turn, definitely, causes psychological damage.
Betty says, sounds like an amazing book, and it really is. Yes, because that psychological damage that human beings do to each other on purpose, if they are doing that, is devastating and life-changing, and people make decisions as a result of it, and the decisions might be devastating because then you start second-guessing and third-guessing yourself. One of the many things I loved about this book is how Kate, the mother, was an executive, a self-made person, executive in a very male-dominated kind of, you think about people in perfume or clothes, but she's not that. Can you talk a little bit about, was that a decision that you made specifically?
A very deliberate choice. When we think of some of the wildly successful female entrepreneurs, they're always in female coded, as you mentioned, fashion, cosmetics, Spanx, all of these. And I thought, no, let's make it a man's world. Let's make it a man's business. And real estate is obviously something, construction is something you think of as men doing. And so it was fun to put her, but still have her be very feminine, still beautiful at 70, glamorous, and a social figure as well. She's not only a power broker in politics, she's a power broker in society. And so she's just as Charlie's a man's man, Kate is also a woman's woman. And yet she works in this field and has succeeded wildly in this field.
Well, she's incredibly relatable. I loved her, and I love Julie, and that's also a wonderful part of the story, that you very carefully took these complex, complicated, layered women and made them both really people who we root for. And that's really, I won't talk any more about it, but that's really another of the powers of this book, is how much we connect with Kate and Julie. Florida, too, is such a character in this book, from the social structure to the weather to the money to the people who come from out of state for some reason. Can you talk a little bit about, I mean, you live in Florida now and you were a transplant. Talk a little bit about why Florida is just such a perfect place for this.
It really is like a flashpoint lately for lots of things that are going on in the world, but it's all kind of concentrated here. We've got a big divide between the haves and the have-nots. We have multimillionaires who come here to retire or to have their vacation homes, but then there's the people who cut the grass and who wait the tables, and just a big divide, a real chasm there. What I've seen during the 20 years that I've been a part-time resident of Florida is rampant development, which fits in perfectly with Kate being a real estate developer. But with it has come a lot of environmental damage and a lot of denial in the state, apparatus of such a thing as climate change. And I really wanted to focus on that as a theme as well, that, with growth, at least the way Kate's been doing it, comes damage.
Yeah.
And then we have the sort of culture wars that have been fought in Florida that are also being fought nationwide. But, there's the Moms for Liberty, but then I have Kate, contributing to the Moms for Literacy and the whole book banning thing and all of that. There was just so much ripe material there. Florida is called the gunshine state because everybody's armed.
Well, and Renee is saying Renee lives in Florida, says Florida has everything going on, great and terrible.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I do think I loved how you handled the environmental climate change element, how building can change the entire landscape, and how weather can change the entire landscape, and what can be done to prevent that, and what can be done to protect the future of Florida. And I love how the book isn't really about that, but it is. And I love the sort of light touch that you give to that. Talk a little bit about that balance.
Yeah, that's in the background of what's going on. Julie is a lawyer who's never been particularly successful on her own. And so her mother hires her to be a company lawyer for the real estate company. But in that regard, she becomes involved with this environmental activist, a young man who's, leading the charge against development. And they clash at the beginning, but over the course of the book, start to find a middle road between the two of them. And by the end, they're, apparently going to be working together.
And it's interesting too, because we get that sense the minute we meet him, and yet we know that can't be. And so I'm wondering how back to the starred review that, I couldn't put it down. And when I was reading it, let me put it this way. When I was reading it, half of me was thinking, I can't wait to find out what's going to happen. And half of me, the author person, was thinking, how is she going to do this? How is she going to pull this off? And you really did. How were you thinking as you were writing the book? How does this story unfold for you?
I always knew what was going to happen at the end, but I knew a couple mileposts along the way, but I honestly don't have it all figured out before I start writing. I'm not a plotter. And so I really had to just, as I was going, think, well, what would be the logical thing to happen here? But how can I do it in such a way that it's not giving it away? And so it's a lot of nip and tuck, like I'm fashioning a garment, this will fit here, but let me try to take it in here and do that kind of stuff.
That is a really wonderful way of thinking about it. Nip and tuck, like making a garment. Shell Games by Bonnie Kistler. That is so interesting because as you get, there are days where you think, I have no idea what's going to happen. And then you just figure out the thing and you do it step by step. Do you love writing? Do you love that you go to your computer or your legal pad and you get to write? Or do you think, oh my goodness, I have to do this now? How do you feel about it?
I like to say that I hate writing, but I love having written. I love having written.
Yes.
Sometimes it really does feel like pulling teeth. And, I do have to, grit my teeth, say, how do I get through the scene? I'm not even, and when I'm not happy with the words, then it's just excruciating, and I will often just, flounce away in a fury, and I'm not a terribly disciplined writer to begin with. I'm not one of these writers who sets so many words per day or so many hours per day. I really think in terms of scenes mostly. I'd really like to write this scene today and see how that comes. And if it's not coming, I really will abandon it for the day and try again the next day.
And when you say when it's not coming, what does that mean? What does that mean? That you can't envision it, that you can't feel it, that you can't understand the characters? How can you parse that out a little bit?
I think that I can always see it, but my words are not matching the vision in my head. Sometimes I just don't feel like I have the words that I'm not capturing this. It was so much better in my dream, in my hallucination or whatever. And then, but it's on the page, it's looking, flat or sterile, or it's not quite there. But I think that I do have an image of what it's supposed to be, but just finding the right words. And it's, I really like to be a wordsmith and find the perfect words to do this.
Yes,
And
it was incredibly impressive throughout the way this is written because it's seamless and fun. You can tell your voice, the Bonnie Kistler voice. This is a very Bonnie Kistler book, and that it's really smart and really logical, but surprising. Talk about gaslighting. You're doing that to the reader because
yes.
the reader doesn't, and that brings up what I was going to say about the perfect title of Shell Games. Because there's the shell game where you move the shells around. You have to guess what's what. And a shell company, maybe. And it takes place in Florida. And there's a bit about the environment and beaches. And there's a boat and a house. And that's not even all the shell games that are encompassed in that. And also, though, you with the reader. And I think that that's so incredibly interesting, too, because you're moving the puzzle pieces around.
And hiding the truth under one of those shells, but moving it around so fast you can't be sure which one it's under.
Was it always called this? Was this always the title? Was this always?
No, it wasn't. In fact, my working title was The Confession because it begins with Charlie's, quote, confession. And that was the launch pad. But when my agent saw it being called The Confession, she said, that sounds like a police procedural. And then my editor said, that sounds like it's Catholic. And I thought these are two, these are not the right sentiments to be evoking here. I need to think of another title. And Shell Games came just instantly to me after that. And I'm glad that they resisted my original working title because Shell Games is the perfect title for this book.
Yes, it is the perfect title. And I wanted, when you thought of it, when you thought of it, did you go back and make more shell references?
I did. I changed the name of Kate's mansion to La Coquina, meaning shell, and the name of the island that she lives in a barrier island off the coast of Sarasota, to Cascara, which is another word for shell. And I think I did work in some other references.
We'll just let readers find out on their own all the shell games that you're playing with us in this absolutely fabulous book. One more question, and then we'll take questions from the audience. And I know we have some. Emily is saying, I like the wordsmith. Absolutely. So, and thank you, Chuck. The book is so cinematic. You take us in a hurricane, you take us to a glamorous party, a beautiful hotel, the elegant boardrooms, and so many more places. Do you see this like a movie in your mind when you're writing?
I absolutely do. That's what I said when I was talking about the image, and just getting the words to match the image. I see it like a movie in my head.
And how do your years as a lawyer, which never go away, how does that kind of knowledge play into your storytelling when you write a book like this?
Yes, I don't write courtroom thrillers the way some lawyer novelists do, but so far at least, I've always had a lawyer character in the book, and that's Julie in this case. Her law business is not a big part of the book. It's just kind of in the background of what she does, and it's how she happens to run into this environmentalist. But my work as a lawyer absolutely informed my career as a novelist, because I see so many similarities between being a trial lawyer and packaging a case for trial, which involves gathering the facts, putting them together in a way that's very persuasive, starting with a hook so that you keep the attention of the judge or jury, and reaching an end point where you get them to buy into your worldview. That's what I did as a lawyer, and that's exactly what I do as a novelist, with one important distinction, which is I get to make up the facts. And in my law career, I wasn't allowed to make up the facts.
That's true. Just like being a reporter, it's the same storytelling and the same persuasion, but you can't make stuff up. And but one of the things that I love about this book, and so many things to love about Shell Games by Bonnie Kistler, is that you sprinkle in the law throughout to give them rules and reasons why things can't happen or must happen, and that makes the story be so realistic.
That's true. There are elements all the way through, like the prenup agreement between Kate and Charlie. That's, there's some law involved there, obviously, and that's an important, possibly motivating factor for Charlie if, in fact, he's gaslighting Kate. And then there's a lot of stuff about estates and what happens with estates, and even just the business of this real estate company, and dealing with personal injury claims that are brought against it. It's all this sort of tapestry of law facts that are in there.
And it makes me feel really smart to read it, because it allows the reader to feel like they already knew that, and that they're really smart and in the book. Tour de force, it's marvelous in every way. Sharon Carlson Person, hey, says, another book to add to my list. Absolutely. So I know that you all have questions for Bonnie, and I'd love to hear some of your questions too. Remember, if you ask a question, Deborah, hey, do you use any of your cases in your book? That's a smart question. Do you? Yes. Do you use your law? Talk about that a little bit.
Some of my earlier books were, in fact, directly inspired by some of the cases I'd worked on. And more recently, because I've been out of the law biz now for more than a decade and just writing, so I don't have any recent cases to draw on, but I do follow cases in the news. And Her Too, which was my last book, was very much based on the cases that we were all following in the news, the Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby and all those cases, directly inspired it and made me think about a different way of tackling that same story. So yeah, I definitely do. And also, I've very much, one of the things I liked about having been a lawyer, even though I really wanted to be a writer, was that I met so many different kinds of people. And I'm sure this is true in your work, true, Hank, that being a reporter, you meet people from different walks of life that you wouldn't otherwise. And I think that you're able to develop much richer, more interesting characters as a result of that.
Oh, absolutely. So I agree. You're so right. You alluded to you always wanted to be a writer. Talk about that a little bit.
From the time I was a child, I was kind of a natural storyteller. The neighborhood children used to gather on my front lawn, and I would sit on the porch and just tell stories, and they would just listen to my stories.
What kind of stories, Bonnie?
I'm sorry?
What kind of stories?
I'm sure that they were like fairy tale stories, and probably dragons and things like that. I don't really remember, but as I got older, I started writing stories. They started to be more realistic. And I went to college with the dream of being a writer, but I got a taste of, reality, and thought that I really wanted to be able to earn a living too, and not just be a starving artist in the garret. And so I went to law school, went into the whole big law firm, big city practice, which is so all consuming and took up so much time. It was very, very hard for me to squeeze out time to write. I did write my first novel in longhand on a yellow legal pad on the train going to and from work, to and from Philadelphia. I couldn't do that today. Today, I definitely need a keyboard today. But then, I finally managed to find time to actually complete a novel, get an agent, get a sale, and then I was able to, take off and eventually leave my law firm and become a full-time writer.
It's just it's always fascinating, because it wouldn't have worked any other way. This is how it worked, and your legal education informed your career as an author and shaped it and taught you. Sometimes it's just meant to be the way it's meant to be.
I think, yeah, as I said, probably the same thing is true of you as being an investigative reporter. That so much informs your work as a novelist.
I didn't start writing fiction until I was 55, like 20
Mm.
years ago. And so it is, sometimes I think, oh, I wish I would have done that sooner, but I couldn't have. I wasn't ready to do it sooner. Who else has a question? Great, Robin.
Yes,
What
yes.
word did you use before
Isn't that great?
became
I
popular?
went into a whole deep dive into gaslighting when I was writing this book. And of course, the 1944 film Gaslight with Ingrid Bergman and Charles Boyer was, and what's interesting is that he wasn't doing anything with the gaslight. He was psychologically manipulating her and making her doubt herself. The gaslight was just a side thing, but that became the word. Somehow that coined the word. And in a matter of just a very few years after that film, people started using it in that sense. It became part of the lexicon, virtually within a decade. And of course, now we all know what it means. What did we use before? I guess probably just manipulating or, lying to, but none of those convey the subject as well as gaslighting.
No, totally agree. I love that. A new word that we all embrace so completely. Margaret, do we have one more question? What is this is going to be hard, but Robin wants to know what's your favorite part of the book?
I think it would have to be, because I was building to it the whole time, it would have to be the final scene on the beach in the very last few pages of the book. And I can't say anything more about it because that's a big spoiler.
And you'll just have to read it to find out what it is. And I know you will, because one of you, in about 30 seconds, we're going to spin the wheel of fun, and one of you will win Shell Games. But I'm telling you, the others of you should just run, click, 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 get a copy of this book. It is so cinematic. It is so much fun. You will never, just don't even bother to try to figure out what is going to happen. Just sit back and relax and listen to a masterful storyteller. Shall we spin the wheel of fun, Bonnie, and see who wins? All right, we draw for the winner. This is so great. I love all of you that came. Thank you.
Yes.
And the winner is... Nope, that's a Mighty Blaze. We can't mark it in that room. You want this, I know, but you cannot have it. We'll spin one more time. This at least proves that it's real, right?
Yes.
Sherry Steuben, that is great. Sherry, you have not won in a long time. I love this that you won. You know the scoop. You email me. I'll email the producer. The producer will email Bonnie's publicist, and then you will get.
We will send it to you.
And we will get Sherry. Mine. Bonnie, thank you so much for being here today. Quickly, before I let you go, let me remind you that Crime Time is going to be on holiday break for the next 2 weeks. And I've got a book to write too, so I'm only on word 36,302. So not a problem. It's all going to work. I have no idea what's going to happen next, so we'll just see. But on January the 7th, we will be back right here at 4 p.m. ET. So mark your calendar and you'll get your little notification from Facebook, 4 p.m. ET on January the 7th. Maxwell Gregory, our wonderful, marvelous, genius, brilliant booker, has put together this roster of unbelievable books for 2025. Just a couple of them: Mask of the Deer Woman by Lori. Very, very cool. Tell Me What You Did by Carter Wilson. Amazing talk about confessions, about a podcaster who has people confess on the air. I won't tell you any more than that. And so many more. So we'll go way past 250 in 2025. And I cannot wait to see you then. Bonnie, thank you.
Thank you, Hank. It's been a pleasure.
And for me too. Thank you. Congratulations on Shell Games, an absolutely terrific book. And you all remember, we will see you next year, January 7th, 2025, Tuesday at 4 p.m. ET, right here on Crime Time. And remember, till then, it is always safe inside a book. And Happy New Year, you all.